pretty exciting stuff with this update 37 beta. For the first time, we get to look at some new Mariner skills, and there's quite a lot of skills to look at. And of course, we're going to look at every single skill, talk about them, and discuss what we think they're going to do. But before going into the skills, I just want to show the legendary items that we know for sure are coming to the Mariner class. So we know that the Haversack will be their class item. As you can see, it says class Mariner, so Haversack is definitely the class item. And for your sword or your weapon, for now we've seen two different types of weapons. One is a stiletto, which is a dagger, and the other one is a cutlass, which is a sword. So for now, we know for sure that Mariner is going to have a weapon and a Haversack class item. Before we go looking at the skills themselves, I just want to mention that there's been found 3 different types of skills. The first one is buff/shanty. So these skills are more like a buff your group, buff everyone, heal everyone types of skills. So support, healer for buff shanty. Then there's Haversack, which is kind of a mixed bag. I guess you use your Haversack to use skills. And the final one is melee/swordplay, which is kind of DPS skills. And the final note here is port skills ? Because I found some skills which lead me to believe that Mariner might be able to port around in the world. So looking at the types of skills we have, I think it's pretty safe to say that Mariner will for sure have a DPS line with the melee swordplay skills, and then they will have a support/healing line. Not sure if they're going to be a main healer or a support, kind of like Loremaster, but they do have buffing skills, healing skills, and they do have melee DPS skills. So it's going to be interesting to see what type of class the Mariner turns out to be. But for now, let's go look at all the skills. So we're going to start with looking at the buff shanty skills. And as you might notice, there seems to be an attunement system on the Mariner, and most buff/shanty skills will attune towards the left. So we can assume that towards the left will be buff/healing, and attunement towards the right will be DPS, sort of like the rune-keeper attunement works. So the first skill we see is Motivating Song. Effects applied to the fellowship within 40 meters, 10% maximum morale, duration 20 minutes, and there's also a little heal when you apply this buff. This is basically another class getting the motivating speech that only Captain has, and we're finally getting it on another class. So Mariner will have Motivating Song to apply the motivating speech buff to your entire raid. The next skill is called Recenter, and this is a buff skill, and it's kind of confusing. What does this mean? Attunes 20. It's not like to a side, but instead it's like maybe this means like neutral attunement. So Recenter would mean that your attunement would go to the middle and be at 0. So maybe your max attunement both ways will be 20, and this will attune 20 towards neutral. So whichever side, if you're built on DPS side or if you're built on support heal, then Recenter will probably put you at 0 attunement. At least to me, that's what I think this skill will do. Next up, we have 3 different stances that the Mariner can be in. So if we look at the first one on the right, Shanty 4 with haste. So it seems like this stance is what you want to be in if you're a DPS Mariner. Having this toggles every second will increase your pips from forward Shanty, which means to the right, I guess. You also get 20% melee damage, 10% run speed. There's also durations set on these. Maybe this will be a permanent buff or just a buff after you switch to this stance. And I think the Shanties on the left is for your support/healing role. You can have Shanty Steady Aft, which will help you build towards the left, and then Shanty Steady 4, which will help you build towards the right. So it probably depends on the role you're filling, but it seems like this is your DPS stance. And then for support healing, these 2 are probably the ones you're going to be using. Belly of Brine seems to be the Mariner's clear, removes up to 3 disease, wound, fear, or poison effects, and it attunes towards the left. So I assume you can target yourself and others with this clear. Parry is another buff you can apply to yourself, giving you 25% parry chance for 3 seconds, and your riposte damage and step back damage, and your riposte damage is increased by 25%, and step back damage reduction reduced, and step back damage reduction increased 15%, that lasts for 10 seconds, attunes 1 to the left. Sea Legs appears to be the Mariner's breakout skill, break off anything, any effect. Cooldown is a minute and attunes 2 towards neutral. Step Back is another buff, gives you plus 25% partial evade chance for 3 seconds, and for 10 seconds it seems like Disengage will gain a heal, and Riposte will enrage a target. I'm not sure what enrage a target means. Maybe it's a taunt, or maybe it's a buff on the enemy or a debuff. But Step Back, partial evade chance, Disengage gains a heal, Riposte enrages the target, and attunes 2 towards the left. Salt Cure is a corruption removal on your target, attunes 1 towards the right. Volatile Salts seem to be working just like Bane Flare. Max targets is 7, radius is 7 meters, and it's a 15-second daze, attunes 3 towards the left, pretty much a similar skill to the Loremaster's Bane Flare. Disengage seems to be another buff skill, giving 10% physical and tactical mitigation, and plus 30% run speed for 5 seconds. It attunes 5 towards the left, and it would make sense that this is a targetable skill as well. You could probably target someone and give them this buff. We have a few wind skills. The North Wind, the West Wind, the South Wind. The North Wind will deal damage and increase the attack duration on your target for 15 seconds. It attunes 3 towards the right. The West Wind and the South Wind both seem to be buffing your Fellowship's damage for 10 seconds, and both attune 2 towards the left. And we also have a skill called Guided by the Stars, which increases the Fellowship's damage within 40 meters by 10% for 10 seconds. It attunes 5 towards the left, but of course it's possible that these skills are not fully finished yet, and that they might change a bit. Since the West Wind and the South Wind has targets, surely they're supposed to do something more. Call the Banners to War buffs your Fellowship members within 40 meters 7.5% damage for 15 seconds, attunes 4 towards the left. The Breaking of Thangorodrim. Now this is a pretty strong skill, deals damage, but more importantly, for 15 seconds the target gets 25% incoming damage, and attunes 5 towards the right. So this is pretty much like an Oathbreaker's Shame, same duration as Oathbreaker's. Oathbreaker's is 35% incoming damage, but this is almost as strong. So I can definitely see Oathbreakers being paired with the Breaking of Thangorodrim. That's going to be a really strong combo for the future. And finally, we have a group of skills called Rummage. So this top one seems like the, I don't know, maybe it's like the one you used before using one of these. So you have Rummage, and then there's a lot of different variants of Rummage. You have Rummage Salt, Knife, Stone, Button, and Scrap of Music. Starting from the right, Scrap of Music will apply a heal and heal over time to your Fellowship within 40 meters. Attunes 3 towards the left. Rummage Button applies a single target heal and a heal over time to a target. Attunes 5 towards the left. Rummage Stone attunes 1 towards the right, deals damage, and applies a 5-second stun. It's a ranged skill. Rummage Knife is also a ranged skill. Applies damage and a dot to your target. Attunes 2 towards the right. And Rummage Assaults is max 7 targets, 7 meter radius, applies damage and a 2-second stun to all targets, and also attunes 3 towards the left. Next up we have the Haversack category of skills. The first one is Breath of Fire, deals fire damage and a fire damage over time, attunes 3 towards the right. Netting is a max 7 targets, 5 meter radius, 15-second route, attuning 2 towards the left. Fizzling Rock seems to be a light type damaging skill, tuning 1 towards the left. Sludge Pot seems to be another damage dealing skill, tuning 1 towards the left. Pitch Pot deals fire damage and reduces tactical mitigation on the target by 10% for 20 seconds, attuning 5 towards the left. Toss a Bottle is a single target heal, attuning 2 towards the left. There seems like there's a Fear skill as well, attuning 2 towards the left. Caustic Brew seems like a really powerful debuffing skill. It deals damage, but also reduces tactical and physical mitigations for 30 seconds, and tactical and physical mitigations for 10 seconds. It deals damage, but reduces your target's mitigations by 10% for 30 seconds and 15% for 10 seconds. Maybe it's supposed to be 15% for the first 10 seconds and then 10 later. I feel like we'll probably see this skill changing a bit in the future, but Caustic Brew, really strong debuffing attack, attuning 4 towards the left. Breath of Ice seems to be a frost damaging skill, attuning 3 towards the left. Thrum of the Sea seems to be a daze skill, dazing your targets for 15 seconds, attuning 1 towards the left. And you have a thrown object skill, dealing damage and attuning 1 towards the left. Time for the melee / swordplay skills. The first one we're going to look at is Flick, deals damage and interrupts inductions, attuning 2 towards the right. Compound Attack seems to be a melee skill, hitting 3 attacks and making a lunge apply a bleed if you use lunge within 10 seconds is what I read this as, attuning 4 towards the right. On Guard, seems like the text says refresh your steady buff and prepare for combat. I'm not sure what steady buff means, but 5% run speed for 10 seconds, and for 10 seconds you get 50% parry skill, parry chance, kind of a parry buff, I guess, parry buff, and thrust deals 100% more damage. Tunes 3 towards neutral. Lunge seems to be pretty straightforward, dealing damage, tuning 5 towards the right. Dodge will give you 25% parry chance for 3 seconds, and for 10 seconds, repose the damage, 25% increase, repose critical chance, 20% increase, and disengage speed, 30% stronger. Attunes 2 towards the left. Thrust seems to be a damaging skill, also giving a 10-second buff where Advance deals 30% more damage, and Step Back gets plus 50% partial evade chance. Attunes 1 towards the right. Feint is a damaging attack, making dodge gain a heal. Cut Over becomes AoE, and 15% compound attack critical chance. These things last for 10 seconds. Attunes 1 towards the left. Riposte seems to be a damaging skill, also giving a buff for 10 seconds where Advance gets 30% more damage, attuning 2 towards the right. Advance is a 2-attack damaging skill, also giving a 10-second duration buff where finisher skills deal 50% more damage, and Dramatic Flourish critical magnitude buff is increased by 15, also attunes 3 towards the right. Cut Over is a damage dealing skill, and the 10-second duration buff it gives is giving flesh or fleshe, applying a latent wound, so giving a bleed to flesh. Sweeping Advance seems to be a AoE alternative to normal advance, dealing damage, 2 attacks, but AoE, giving the same buffs, 50% finisher skills damage, and 15% dramatic flourish critical magnitude buff for 10 seconds, attuning 3 towards the right. Check Step seems to be a damage dealing skill, giving a 10-second buff where there's a 25% increase to 4 skills of damage, which is probably skills that attune towards the DPS side to the right. Disengage will gain a heal, and Repose will enrage a target. Dramatic Flourish seems to be a damage dealing skill, healing the Mariner by a small amount, and applying a buff to the Fellowship within 20 meters, 50% critical hit chance for 2 seconds. So attuning 4 towards the right, so a really strong buff there, probably for like 1 or 2 skills, but it seems like this can give a really good boost to your Fellowship's damage. Blooded Targets is a damage dealing skills, putting a debuff on the enemies for 15 seconds where they get 5% incoming damage, attuning 3 towards the right. Salt Sea Blade is a 2-attack damaging skill, reducing the enemy's tactical and physical mitigations by 3% for 20 seconds, also giving you a 10-second duration buff where finisher skills will deal 50% more damage, and the Dramatic Flourish critical magnitude buff increases by 15%. It attunes 3 towards the right. And the final skill we're going to look at is Flesh or Fleshe, I don't know how you pronounce that, but it's a damage dealing skill, attuning 5 towards the right. And finally, the last set of skills that I found was skilled called Sail to X. So to me, it seems like the Mariner will have ports where they can sail to these locations: Suricula, Pelargir, Sarnford, Snowborn, Buckland, Killendim, the Brownlands, Trader's Wharf, After Battle Osgiliath, Dale, Merc Eves, Tinodir, Dolamroth, and Lothlorien. So it seems to me like the Mariner can earn these skills and then travel to these places, and I'm kind of curious if they can bring people along with them, sort of taking them on the boat and sailing there, kind of like the Hunter port. But it seems like Mariner will be able to port at least themselves, maybe the Fellowship. Maybe these skills are totally unrelated to Mariner, but to me it seems like Mariner will have some sort of port skill. Those were all the skills that I found for the Mariner. Of course, it's really early development, so the skills might change a lot still until Mariner is getting released. But at least that's like a first look of all the new skills. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hey! Hey you! Yeah, you! What do you want? You enjoy my content and you want to support me? Fine, I'll show you how you can do it. I would really appreciate if you like the video and subscribe to my channel. You can also support me through my Ko-fi homepage. If you're playing or looking to play Lord of the Rings online, there is one place you need to be. The Ghyniverse is a Discord server created for the community of the players of Lord of the Rings Online. The server is getting close to 7,000 members, and in this server you'll find tons of helpful information. There's monthly giveaways, easy access to patch notes, you can keep up with my YouTube videos, my streams. If you're a streamer, you can ask for the streamer role and you can announce your streams in the other stream channel. There are discussion channels for pretty much everything, every class, monster players. But the best thing about this server is probably the Gearing Resources tab, where you can find anything from trait lines for every class, every build. There are stat goals, where you can find out what stats you should aim for on your characters. Really helpful information about drop rates from instances, as well as screenshot from all the new loot that appears in the game. If you enjoy Lotro, you should definitely consider joining this server, and hopefully I'll see you in Middle-earth. If you were part of the Ghyniverse already, you might have noticed that another tab appeared at the top, the LFF server. This server is a brand new server that I created, the LFF Ghyniverse. In this server, you can select which servers you want to keep up with, and once you select your server, say you select Arkenstone, you will see the LFF, the kinship advertisement, looking for kinship and trade channels, and there's also voice channels if people want to use those. The LFF channel is basically a looking for fellowship channel where people can post if they need players for the runs, and this way people don't have to be logged into the game to see the chat. They can just instead get a notification on their Discord. There's also a kinship advertisement page where kins can post their kinship advertisement and have people join their kins. And you can also post in the looking for kinship chat if you're looking for a kinship, but make sure to take a look in the kinship advertisement first and look through all the kin to find a suitable kin for you. There's also a trade channel if people want to buy or sell stuff that you can use. Hopefully you'll consider joining this server to bring the community even more together, not just in the game, but also outside of the game.